episode 3 of West Hollywood Youth Orchestra's Basic Music Series. On today's episode, we're going to be learning clefs, bass clef, alto clef, and treble. So recapping what we learned in last week's episode, we don't use every possible frequency in music. We only use some of them. And using a system of 5 lines and 4 spaces, we focus on the range or the specific area of music an instrument plays. A violin doesn't play the same notes as a bass and vice versa, so a violin doesn't need to notate those low notes and a bass doesn't need to notate those high notes. In today's episode, we're going to take you through the 3 major clefs still in use and teach you how to read and write in them.
So first up, we're going to draw our 3 clefs. We have the G clef, the alto clef, and the bass clef. So just going to throw 5 lines. So the G clef, kind of, if you notice, has kind of the shape of a G, is marking the G below a 440. The alto clef is what's called a C clef. If you notice, kind of has the shape of a C. It's just kind of a fancy way, but if you don't want to do it, you can also just do a capital K. That works just as well. And that tells us where C is, right above A220. You could also look at it as below A440. Finally, our bass clef, which kind of like an F, the 2 dots stand for the F strokes. So we're going to have a stroke. And so that tells us where the F is, below A220. So once again, we have our G clef. For our alto clef, or just capital K will suffice, or if you want, you do these. And finally, our bass clef, it's just almost like a question mark, just 2 dots. So we have our 5 lines. Now these lines can mean anything at the moment, but once I put the treble clef in place, we immediately know this is referring to a G, and the G below a 440. So remember, just like our alphabet, each line or space takes a value. So space A, line G, so that means that this next space is going to be F. So this A is in this space, so this line then takes a B. And then logically, the next space is C. And just continue the pattern. D, E, F, and G. Cool. Now let's use the same rationale for our alto. Right now, these 5 lines can mean anything, but once I put a big ol' C clef, I know that this is my C. So then going up in the alphabet, this must be D, E, F, and G. And same thing, just using logic, going backwards in the alphabet, we then have B, A, G, and F. And again, we're looking for this orientation note, which tells us which note is on which line or space, and also which octave we're in. So I should probably put the little numbers. This is C4, this is B3, A3. These are in the 4th octave, and the same. This is G4, so these are all in the 4th octave. Let's see, we start the 5th octave. Let's look at our bass clef. So I'll just give you 5 lines. Start with our orientation note, and that's our F, and that tells us that the closest F, G, A is going to be 220. And we can go in the opposite direction, F, backwards in the alphabet, E, D, C, B, and there's our other A, which is going to be 110. So this is going to be our fourth octave, our third octave. So this is still third, third, third. And we C is kind of the breaking point, and we start our second octave underneath. So to review episode 3, we have our treble, which is focused around A440. We have our alto, which is around A220, and our bass, which is from A110 to 220. Our treble clef is based after a capital G. Our alto clef can be drawn as a K, but really comes from what was called the C clefs. And our bass clef is a fancy F. These are also the orientation notes shown. So out of 5 lines, the G clef shows where G is below A440. The alto clef shows where C is above A220 and below A440 up here. And finally, the bass clef focuses on the F, sorry, that's an F, below A220 down to A110. And just by using this graphing system, we can go up or down. Up is forward in the alphabet, and down is backwards in the alphabet.
If you're enjoying West Hollywood Youth Orchestra's basic music series, of course, please subscribe and visit us at YTOoA.org for follow-up lesson plans and more help on your journey to becoming a musician. Salve and walete.